After the loss to the Rams in the wildcard round, the Carolina Panthers are on to the offseason, trying to capture the momentum they are building in Charlotte. So in this video, I'll be going through what the Panthers should do this offseason so they can become another dangerous team in the NFC and go back-to-back in the division. Now let's start with an overall team outlook. Dave Canales had a great season as head coach and he'll be back for sure. We're going to see what they do at defensive coordinator. Evero's contract is up, and he's also getting looks at head coach. But I think if you're the Panthers, you didn't have a bad defense, but I think you can definitely look for an upgrade and try to get a defensive coordinator that can truly bring the best out of what this defense can do. Because I think the overall team has great building blocks, offensively and defensively. Of course, Bryce Young, will get to a bigger discussion about him later. Tedero McMillan had a great rookie year. Jalen Coker was big in that playoff game and throughout the season. They found a gem in him with the UDFA. The offensive line has been pretty solid. There's some injury concerns. Aquano, who just got injured. Robert Hunt was great. Cade Mays is serviceable at that center spot. Taylor Moton's a solid offensive lineman. A little older, there's some questions about longevity for that offensive line, but I definitely think that there is a lot that they can build on. And then defensively, of course, Derrick Brown, one of the best defensive tackles in the league. Nick Scorton, I think, is a great building block on the edge. Mike Jackson and J.C. Horn were great cornerbacks and had an incredible game versus the Rams this playoffs. So those are your true building blocks. Of course, there's other people that I think have a chance to become key parts of this defense or offense, but I think we're looking at the top names, building blocks for next year. Those are the key ones, right? And so let's get into, again, kind of dissecting this Panthers team a little bit more, and before they go into the offseason, before we go into free agency and the draft, the cap situation and other team questions, okay? Now, they are working around $30 to $40 million, and that's going to be based off money they set aside for rookies, new extensions. They don't have the money like the Commanders, the Raiders, the Titans, but they can definitely build. Now, let's talk about Bryce Young. That's the big question. Does he deserve this fifth-year option? And now, I will say he does. Obviously, it's not been great. It's not been the super successful 3-year career so far for the number 1 overall pick. But man, he had a pretty wonderful season. It wasn't super spectacular, but from where it was, at the bottoms of the bottoms there, the first 2 years, getting benched, then coming back, and he was able to stay pretty much consistent throughout this entire year. Again, didn't take the league by storm, but he was a key part in why the Panthers were able to win the NFC South, but also take the Rams to the brink this past weekend. So I think Bryce Young is deserving of that 5th-year contract, and then we can see how next year goes, and then you can start really getting into that discussion about possibly extending him for a bigger dollar amount for more years and officially becoming the franchise quarterback there in Carolina. But I think he's done enough to warrant accepting that and moving on as a quarterback for at least the next 2 years contractually. They do also have some notable free agents. Cade Mays at the center, I think with Aquano injury, some aging things, I think consistency on that offensive line where they've been aggressive going there. I think bringing in some, again, familiarity, consistency, Cade Mays, bringing him back on whatever that dollar point is would be worth it. Now, Rico Dowdle, he had a quote saying based off some of the recent usage he has, he's splitting the backfield there with Chuba Hubbard and Trevor Etienne as well, that maybe it changes how he goes in the free agency, and ultimately I don't know if he'll be back. Rico Dowdle was big for the Panthers. They gave him a ton of carries, and it maybe wasn't the most efficient season he may have had, but was a true workhorse at times for the Panthers. But I think they got both sides got what they wanted. A good running back there for Rico Dowdle, or for the Panthers, that helped them get to where they did this season. And Rico Dowdle should probably get paid this offseason. Not a ton, but I think this is a guy that's going to get his money's worth this offseason after this season. And ultimately, I think that's a win-win, and I think the Panthers can go out there, keep Chuba Hubbard. I think Trevor Etienne could be part of that, and look for somebody else. And we'll get into that possibly as maybe one of their needs that we talked about. And so the big thing is Jalen Coker. He is an exclusive rights for agents, but the essential thing is that they'll have the right to sign him before other people do, and I think he should get a contract extension. It's not going to be anything crazy, not going to be a top tier one, but he's definitely solidified himself as the wide receiver 2 there, or maybe wide receiver 3 if you want to go out and get somebody else next to Tet, because Tet is of course the wide receiver 1. But in terms of the Panthers, let's just say he's going to be maybe a top tier wide receiver 2, especially if he continues on this trajectory that he does have with the Panthers. So again, you don't have to pay him a ton, don't have to lock him up for a ton of years if you really don't want to, but I think but this is your time to take advantage of probably his lowest valuation of himself and his talent. He knows he's going to be wanting the money, and so there's going to be contract negotiations. His agent's going to do a lot of bidding for him, but it's not like he's going to get paid a ton of money. He's not going on open market seeing what he's worth, right? So there's a chance for you to get that contract extension with Jalen Coker, and it could be like a 4-year deal, and maybe he's getting $5 to $10 million a year. I'd be pretty happy in bringing Jalen Coker in for that amount. It's looking pretty good for your wide receiver 2 there in Carolina to help Bryce Young. If we're talking about cap situation and what the team is working with now, those you have the building blocks. Some of the notable free agents, Cade Mays, Jalen Coker coming back, and so you have some cap space to work with. And so let's go ahead and get into free agency. Now, just before we get into free agency, if you like videos like this and maybe want to see your team talked about in the next video, go ahead and subscribe to the channel for more. Now we're heading into the true offseason, free agency, the draft. So I listed here, honestly, a bunch of positions of need that they could really look for going into this free agency cycle. Of course, you're not going to get everybody, and these are just a short list of names they could go after. Let's start with where I think they need to be aggressive at, and that is edge rusher. I think either in the draft, free agency, going after some top tier edge rushers, or just spending money at that situation, because they need to be able to create pass rush. And so they were aggressive offensively the last few years in terms of spending that offensive line, getting a top tier receiver for wide receiver with Tedero McMillan. It's time to do that defensively, right? And so the two guys I have here is Trey Hendrickson, and I think if you're any team looking for a good pass rusher, Trey Hendrickson should be on your short list. I think they'll have the money, they'll have the opportunity to go out there if he does hit the open market, and I think that would make a ton of sense to get a true pass rusher. Nick Scorton on the other side, maybe draft another one, right? Now, if you can't get Trey Hendrickson, another guy I think a little bit of a sneaky move, maybe sleeper, is Dante Fowler Jr. I think a solid veteran that could really come in, maybe help some of the younger edge rushers as well, but I think he could be a nice piece that can go out there, be a situational pass rusher, and I don't think he's terrible either way. He can get to the quarterback. I think he's also solid on the run side as well, so that would make a ton of sense. You could look also on that defensive line to pair somebody up next to Derrick Brown on that defensive tackle. Tyre Tart has had an incredible season for the Chargers. Sebastian Joseph Day is a solid veteran lineup. Now, if you want a situational pass rusher on the inside, I like Tim Settle from the Texans. He had a pretty solid season for the Texans defense. Also, linebackers, because we saw there in the Rams game, the Rams were able to pick apart the Panthers' middle of their defense. You got the outside locked up, right? But maybe a linebacker or two. Caden Ellis had a great season for the Eagles. Quincy Williams, Nakobe Dean, who is going to be a little bit questionable for the Eagles. So getting one of those guys to pair up in that linebacker spot, I think could make a ton of sense. Could also look at that in the draft for your linebackers. Running backs, I think this is a chance for you to get maybe your true number one in a way. Of course, still you want to work with Chuba Hubbard, no Rico Dowdle, as I would expect. Running backs, Travis Etienne. Pair up the Etienne brothers on the same team. Kenneth Walker, Javonte Williams. Travis Etienne and Kenneth Walker are kind of like your higher tier guys that are going to hit the open market this season. And so if you want to spend at the running back position, I think those are two guys that you could spend. Or if you want your Rico Dowdle replacement, I think Javonte Williams could make a ton of sense there. I could see the Cowboys looking to bring him back, but his contract does end after the season, so I don't think it's a bad idea to look at a Rico Dowdle replacement and get a Javonte Williams-esque type of running back there. Receiver, if you want a wide receiver 3, maybe just add some depth. De'Ami Brown, Jahan Dotson, I think are two guys that probably won't go for a ton this free agency class, so getting them and adding them to the depth spot at the receiver court don't think hurts. If you want to look at a tight end, because the tight end situation isn't great, you want to spend money, maybe go after a Kyle Pitts. If you want to maybe just get a solid veteran, Tyler Higbee I don't think is a terrible option as well. And I'll also put as another need, position of need is a tackle, but I think that's maybe somewhere you just go ahead and get a depth piece and then you draft a tackle maybe. And we'll talk about that in the 3-round mock draft I will have made up for the Panthers. But I don't think we should not look at a tackle with the Ike Ekwonu injury, Taylor Moton getting on the older side. Again, I think depth on this offensive line is also a priority that the Panthers should look to get this offseason as well. So we went through free agency, getting guys, in my opinion, I think Dante Fowler would be a great addition. Tahir Tart would be great. Kenneth Walker, Travis Etienne addition to the running back room would be great additions. Now, let's go ahead and go into the 3-round mock draft I've made up here for the Carolina Panthers. And now it's just a 3-round mock draft because we're so far away from the NFL draft. It's hard to project everything. But for their first pick, the 19th overall pick, I have them going edge rush help in Romello Height. He's a great pass rusher. I think he can work on his run defense. But I really think being aggressive on that defensive line and helping guys and getting guys that can truly make the quarterback antsy in the pocket, get to the quarterback, create sacks, and really help out your secondary that I think has a chance to be good. So Romello Height from Texas Tech would be a really great fit. Maybe if, one of the other guys of maybe a Cassius Howell falls or somebody like that, I think. But in this mock draft that I did, he didn't, and I think Romello Height would have been the next best pass rusher there. Now, I do have them going tackle, like I was just talking about a few minutes ago, in Monroe Freeling. He would be a developmental tackle. I think he can definitely get in there at times. A great athlete, explosive tackle from Georgia that, again, Icky, if he maybe goes down with an injury, you can maybe slide him in at tackle. Taylor Moton, he's getting older. How long is he going to be there? Maybe in a year or two, Monroe Freeling can be that right tackle replacement, and you already got your tackle there on the team. So I think that's a big thing because you look at teams like the Eagles and that can sustain a lot of winning for years over years. That offensive line is a key point, and I think the Panthers should start doing that in this draft. And then with my 3rd pick, I have them going cornerback D'Angelo Pons. I think adding him to the slot as a primary slot defender would really help out this secondary. You have the 2 guys on the outside we keep talking about, but again, they were huge in that game versus the Rams, and they should be huge moving on in the future of the Panthers and J.C. Horn and Mike Jackson. But D'Angelo Pons, a little smaller, 5'9", but a great slot option there. We talked about how they were kind of carving up the middle. The Rams were in that final drive, or even in the second half. The Panthers need to work on the middle of their field, and D'Angelo Pons can be that. Had that pick 6 to start the game versus Indiana versus Oregon. And if you really need to, he can probably play on the outside, given the scheme, or if maybe injuries start to pile up for the Panthers. I really love that situation. So that's how I have the Panthers drafting if I wanted to wrap up this offseason as a whole. I love the direction that the Panthers are going, and I think an offseason like this might have them go back-to-back in the NFC South. So what are your guys' thoughts on the Carolina Panthers? And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.